the Bears quarterback situation got worse. Here's why. Obviously, you have Mitchell Trubisky they drafted a few years ago at number 2 overall, took a big risk. And I know Bears fans, if maybe turn the radio off for a quick second here, I know you love hearing this fact. But Ryan Pace, the Bears general manager, drafted Mitchell Trubisky at number 2 after 1 year as a starter in North Carolina, drafted him in that same draft over Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson, who were taken 8 and 10 picks later, respectively. So not a great reminder for Bears fans of what could have been. Obviously, it's out of those 3 quarterbacks, it's easy to slot where, who's had the most success and who's the least amount of success. Hint, Bears fans, you're at the bottom. But this is my thought at least. So obviously, you had a situation and you had a bad position at quarterback but the worst part for them is they had a team, at least a defense, that is built to win now. They have a great defense, a great, great, great top 5 defense. They have an offense who has some decent weapons. The issue is a quarterback, and the system at least is not running at their hope. And at least trading for Nick Foles, my big worry is what really does that solve? Because Mitchell Trubisky is extremely inconsistent. Blame it on his lack of reading the field, blame it on his lack of knowing the offense, and you can also blame it on, maybe Matt Nagy, the head coach, who calls plays, maybe not putting Mitch in the best position to succeed. Right? Mitchell Trubisky loves running with the ball, loves kind of being mobile, and Matt Nagy at least tries to keep him in the pocket. So really kind of doing the opposite. And at least with Nick Foles, you bring in a guy who's equally inconsistent over a longer time span. Now, again, it's easy to kind of fall in love because he had those 2 great playoff runs in back-to-back years with the Eagles. Obviously, he comes in for Carson Wentz, goes to the Super Bowl and wins the Super Bowl, and next year comes in again for Carson Wentz, end of the year, gets them to the playoffs, wins some impressive games to get to the playoffs, and again, does actually beat the Bears team, which ironically, that Bears win in the NFC wildcard round, which, if you're a Bears fan, again, another great memory for you is that doinked kick by Cody Parkey to lose the game and have the Eagles advance. That was Nick Foles' actually last win as a starter, ironically enough, back in 2018 in the playoffs. So, at least to me, though, you need an answer. And they need an answer long-term, or at least that is something that could be competent. Nick Foles is extremely inconsistent. He's basically a higher-paid, older version of Mitchell Trubisky. Very inconsistent. Don't know what you're going to get. Shows flashes, and then all of a sudden, especially in the regular season, shows some bad, bad play. Let's not forget, after that Super Bowl run, where especially against the Vikings in the NFC title game and the Super Bowl against the Patriots, he played lights out. He was absolutely the reason they won. He played great. He probably had maybe the 2 best games of his career in that little stretch right there, and obviously the 2 biggest games of his career in terms of importance-wise. Let's not forget, so Carson Wentz gets hurt, still not ready to come back week 1 of that following year. So Nick Foles on a Thursday night against the Falcons opens up the season. Everyone's watching the hype that the Eagles won their first Super Bowl. Everyone is jacked up. At halftime, Nick Foles and that offense was booed off the field. It took exactly 1 half for Eagles fans to get frustrated with the way the offense was running, boo the Eagles, boo Nick Foles off the field, and again, they would eventually come back and win. And then you go to week 2 in Tampa, they lose that game, and all of a sudden, week 3, Carson Wentz is back. Obviously, we know that Wentz gets hurt again. Foles comes in, plays great. But my thing is, he's so inconsistent. He's basically the same version, just again, older and higher paid. How does spending a lot of money on the quarterback position, at least for this year, benefit the Bears in any way? I understand it's restructured where he can get out of it, the Bears can get out of it going forward after a year. But Nick Foles, heading into 2020, is the 2nd highest paid player on the team. Think about that. Khalil Mack, number 1. He's an all-pro, a stud. Number 2, Nick Foles. He might not even beat out Mitchell Trubisky to start the year. Get him a backup being the 2nd highest paid player on your roster. Or if he does play, the chances are he could get benched. Because you see what happened in Jacksonville. Nick Foles parlayed those 2 great years and those 2 postseason runs he had in Philadelphia. Got a huge 4-year, $88 million contract in Jacksonville. Unfortunately, gets hurt in that first game. Comes back, can't wrangle the starter job away from 6th-round pick Gardner Minshew. And now, 1 year after that 4-year deal, he's traded. So to me, the Bears need some sort of a real answer here. They need a real answer. Look at all the young quarterbacks in the AFC. You look at all the seasoned veterans that are ready to win now in the NFC. The Bears are basically in between a rock and a hard place. They have a great roster ready to contend. They don't have a quarterback. I personally would have gave Mitch 1 more year, try to figure it out because he's still young enough. And, we've seen players kind of understand and finally have the game slow down for them early on. in years 2, 3, and 4, I would have at least gave Mitch one more year, see what you have, and either explore the trade market or try to parlay your draft picks after you get a first-round pick next year, try to trade up and draft a quarterback next year. So to me, it just made it worse because all you're doing is bringing more inconsistency at a higher price. I'm not a big fan. We'll see. Maybe I'm wrong, but at least for right now, the Bears, to me, they just made their situation worse. The Colts. As a Colts fan, I was dreading this signing. I really was. It seemed I was probably in denial because now, at least the reports you see, especially even a month ago, it seemed like it was inevitable. Philip Rivers and the Colts agreed to a one-year, $25 million deal. And this is why I'm pushing back. It's a one-year deal, so it's really not a lot of risk. But to me, at least, similar to the Bears, the Colts are building a legitimate roster all around the team outside of the quarterback position, especially on defense. They made a big trade, trading for DeForest Buckner, trading their first-round pick for that defensive tackle from the 49ers who was great on that run to the Super Bowl for San Francisco this year. So they're really trying their best to build the defense, which for so long, being a Colts fan, we saw was non-existent. And really outside of 4 games in the 2006 playoffs, when the Colts won the Super Bowl, they were pretty bad, and they really never helped out much to bail out the offense. Now Chris Ballard's coming in, really trying to change that around, build a great offensive line, trying to build a great defensive line. And again, I think the Colts have a legitimate roster. They have a win-now roster. My issue is this, similar to the Bears. Right now, at least the answer is, especially in the AFC, you have a lot of young quarterbacks rising up. You have Patrick Mahomes in your own division. You have Deshaun Watson. You have Josh Allen and Sam Darnold possibly taking steps, especially Josh Allen with the Bills. This is a young quarterback league. And at least to me, the Colts had a chance at 13 to either possibly trade up because they have a ton of draft capital to draft a young quarterback, or you're going with Jacoby Brissett, who, before he got injured against the Steelers, was 5-2, did go to Kansas City and beat the Chiefs in Kansas City on Sunday night. Granted, it's not like he threw the ball over the yard. They ran the ball a ton. But we've seen teams like the San Francisco 49ers run the ball a ton, have success, and go all the way to the Super Bowl. So to me, at least, Philip Rivers, I don't see as much of an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. The mindset's different because Philip Rivers is more aggressive, and that's one of the biggest frustrations with Jacoby Brissett with the Colts is that he doesn't really take any chances. He's a very safe quarterback. He will throw the ball underneath a ton. He won't really try to risk it throwing it downfield or throwing it in tight coverage. Philip Rivers has zero problem with that. The 20 receptions last year shows that he is ready to sling it. The arm maybe not be there for that, but he still has the gunslinger mindset of he's going to fit it and he can make any throw. And at least that fits ideology-wise what the Colts want to do. But to me, at least, I would have went young. I would have tried to continue to sustain success that the Texans are trying to build with Deshaun Watson, with the Chiefs that have already built with Patrick Mahomes. And I would have at least went young in the draft, at least in trying to keep up with the young guns instead of. I mean, they bought themselves a year, right? You have Philip Rivers to see what you can do. I don't think he's the answer. I don't think he's getting over the hump. To me, I tweeted this, and I think this has 8-8 written all over it. You bring Philip Rivers in, he'll play great at some points. I think he'll be the reason why you win a game or two. And especially with the Chargers last year, he could have a game like he had against the Chiefs where he throws 5 picks and is the reason why they lose. I don't see much of an upgrade personally. I'd rather, and if you could see now, there are 2 teams in a row that have signed older quarterbacks and try to play them over younger quarterbacks who are both inconsistent. To me, I still rather keep the younger quarterbacks. I still at least have hope that the ceiling could be high with the young guy that can figure it out rather than an old veteran that you basically know what they can do, what their limits are, and are declining. So the only way I'll view this signing differently is if they do end up still drafting a young quarterback later in the draft, and if they trade Jacoby Brissett, I'll live with it fine. So this you have a plan where you have Philip Rivers for a year, have the quarterback drafted, learn under a professional, and try to hand over the reins in a year from now. But I just don't see Philip Rivers being that difference to go to the Super Bowl. I really don't. I know some Colts fans are excited that they think now they're Super Bowl contenders. Personally, I still don't. So the jury's out for me on Philip Rivers. I just don't see much of an upgrade over Jacoby Brissett. So I'm not happy about it. $25 million is a lot of money considering the Colts don't spend a lot of money. They don't. The last 2 contracts they've just had with DeForest Buckner and now Philip Rivers are anomalies. They don't sign guys to big deals unless they trust them. So now you see a philosophy change from Chris Ballard. I do trust him. We'll see what happens, but to me at least, this does not make the Colts all of a sudden a Super Bowl contender more than what they were last year. The Panthers are interesting because I'm still not really sure what the Panthers are trying to do. They signed Teddy Bridgewater to a 3-year deal, $63 million, just about 20 a year, give or take. And it's interesting because if you're a college fan, you're familiar with the name Joe Brady, who was the LSU offensive coordinator last year, helped devise one of the best offenses we've ever seen really in college sports of late. And he was with the Saints 2 years ago. So there's a Teddy Bridgewater, Joe Brady connection for when he was with the Saints 2 years ago. Now they reunite back in Carolina. The thing I guess I'm confused about is I don't know what direction the Panthers are trying to go in. Because they moved on from Cam Newton, or are trying to move on from Cam Newton, which to me at least is the absolute right decision. Cam Newton, very talented still, but he's too banged up, he's too injury prone to really have him try to be the face of a franchise. And more importantly, with the new owner in town in Carolina, with the new head coach, and the general manager on his last year of his contract, this basically seems like writing on the wall is the Panthers are trying to rebuild and kind of put their own stamp on it, right? They had Cam Newton. They had this core guys that went to the Super Bowl a few years ago. They got rid of Ron Rivera. And I told Cam Newton that apparently he could seek a trade, which apparently, according to Cam Newton, is not true, that they're forcing him out. But either way, Cam Newton will not be in Carolina in 2020, which is the right move. But, Mike, I guess what I'm confused about is I kind of figured that, and there was come writing on the wall, that the Panthers would tank this thing out, almost do what the Dolphins did, trade players of value, and try to kind of basically scrap everything down, strip everything down, and build it back up their way. And even I know, working in radio myself as a producer, we were fielding calls just last week, or I believe it was 2 weeks ago, actually, I apologize. Panthers fans were calling in, worried that the Panthers were going to trade Christian McCaffrey because they thought a rebuild was coming. They're going to basically sell off any parts that have value, and because this could be a 2 or 3 year rebuild, by the time Christian McCaffrey, or by the time at least I should say the Panthers are trying to contend and win, Christian McCaffrey may be too banged up and too many miles on that body between catching the ball and running the ball that they figure you sell high now. By the time they're trying to win, they can get someone else. So I'm not really sure because Teddy Bridgewater will be, for lack of a better word, a bridge quarterback to the franchise quarterback they end up drafting, whether it's this year, whether it's next year. So I'm not really sure if they're trying to win because it seems like, you could have signed some bad quarterbacks or even had Kyle Allen on your roster, which is not a great quarterback. You could have trotted him out there and tried to lose games. So it's an interesting sign, at least to me, because I don't really know what the direction the Panthers are going in yet. They made one right move in moving out from Cam Newton. Absolutely had to do it. But I'm not sure, again, their future and what their plans for 2020 is still kind of up in the air. And maybe I guess we'll see what their draft is like and what their free agent signings are like, what kind of direction they're going into. So that's, at least to me, a razor question. I'm not really sure the direction the Panthers are going in. And finally, the Raiders signed Marcus Mariota, the contract not disclosed just up yet. And we talked about it Monday. Marcus Mariota is the antithesis of Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is an emotional wreck. He is the girl at the bar, or if you're a girl, the guy at the bar that seems too good to be true, good-looking, smart, funny, easy to talk to, and then they're single. It's like, how is this person single? It's like everything is there. The math doesn't add up to why this person currently is single at a bar talking to me. And things head off, and all of a sudden, next you know, in a few weeks or a few months, you realize now you know why they're single. This is, at least to me, Jameis Winston in a nutshell. And the complete opposite of that, the safety effect, or the safety blanket, I should say, is Marcus Mariota. Solid backup, but to me, nothing more. Because Jameis Winston gives you the highs, he gives you the lows. He has talent, but his decision-making is bad. His eyesight apparently is pretty bad considering he got LASIK this offseason. Maybe that will be the big difference. But Marcus Mariota is just one of those guys who's very safe, will hold on to the ball too long, really can't read the field, really not dynamic, doesn't throw the ball deep. So he's a nice safety blanket in case, worst case scenario happens for a game or two if he needs to step in. But this is not an upgrade over Derek Carr. It's not really insurance in case they want to trade or Derek Carr gets seriously hurt. If Marcus Mariota has played some significant minutes this year at quarterback for the Las Vegas Raiders, they're in trouble. They are in big, big trouble, and this is probably not the guy you want to advertise and kind of be the face of the franchise as you're moving to a new location, a new city, trying to establish fan bases. So I really thought they would have a great chance to try to go hard after Tom Brady. Going to Las Vegas, need to establish a fan base, need to get some buzz around that city to come to your stadium, be a Raiders fan. Let's just say Marcus Mariota won't help sell any more season tickets.